My husband, 39, now knows about my 36 for 6-month-long affair but hasn't told me. Hello. Welcome back to another exciting episode. If you like what you see, please show your support by liking this video, subscribing, and clicking on the notification bell so you don't miss out on new content. Let's dive right into it. Okay, so maybe let's start out with a little background. My husband and I first met when I was right out of college in a new city. He swept me off my feet, and from our first date it was magic. We married 3 years after that, and now we have an 8-year-old daughter. We both work pretty great jobs, and between caring for our daughter and work responsibility, we are both busy people. But he always made time for me and treated me like royalty, even when I didn't do the same. Around the beginning of 2019, I became familiar with one of my co-workers, Nick. He's about my age and has a wife and 3 kids of his own. Nick and I started so innocent. We would go out to work outings together and sit close by and talk. I started sitting in his lap and we had some light touching, but nothing too severe. I guess he reminded me of when my husband and I were young. There was a passion in Nick's eyes that drew me close to him. Eventually, we started sleeping together. I knew during the whole time it was wrong, but I pushed through, never once thinking about the impact it could have on my husband. This morning started off as usual. My husband gets into the shower before me every day, and I snooze before I have to hop in too. He mentioned last night that he was going to stop by Costco on the way home from work today, so I grabbed my husband's phone so I could add to the shopping list a few things that I wanted. I know my husband's iPhone lock code, so I went into the Notes app to add what I wanted, and when I opened the app, it opened to a folder with dates listed on it. The dates started the first week of March and continued unabated until last week. I curiously opened one of the dates, and to my shock, it was a diary. I never knew my husband as the type of person to write out his thoughts and emotions. I read through the first couple entries of his diary, and it broke my heart. The diary was all about my infidelity and how my husband was processing it. Looking at the dates that were listed, he discovered my affair about a month after it became physical. I quickly locked his phone and hid it. When he came out of the shower, I helped him look for the phone. I hid. My husband has a work phone and a personal phone, so he was unfazed about not being able to find it. He was on a time crunch and left the house with only his work phone. I called off work and read each diary entry. I feel like I may vomit. Almost each entry for the first 3 months he discovered my affair were about how he planned on making her fall in love with me again. He had detailed in this diary the plans he had to make me forget about Nick. He talked about taking us on a week-long vacation so I couldn't see him, how he bought my favorite flowers and cooked my favorite dish, but I continued to see Nick. As the time went on and I continued to tell lies to my husband, he would write in the diary about how his resolve is beginning to waver, how he is becoming depressed and feels so lonely and unloved. After 3 months, the diary entries became wholly about his depression and how he cries every time he knows I am with Nick. He writes how every night before falling asleep, he has visuals of Nick's body on top of mine and how the visuals make him feel physically ill. He keeps writing in his diary how he doesn't want our daughter to grow up with divorced parents like he did. There is a diary entry from 1 month ago that stopped me in my tracks, though. In the entry, my husband talks about how one night when I was with Nick and he put our daughter to bed, he was crying to himself like usual, but the tears stopped flowing. He says that his body finally stopped producing tears for his failed marriage. He says this night was the night the Band-Aid fully came off. In this entry, he talks about how this 6-month-long process felt like a Band-Aid on his soul that was slowly being pulled off. And how now the Band-Aid was finally off. He felt a wave of like he finally got over me. 2 weeks ago, he had another diary entry. In this one, he talks about how he wants to arrange to meet an escort girl. He writes that he doesn't know how to start an affair, but having sex with someone other than his wife will be an interesting experience. My husband knows my cheating schedule. He has planned on meeting this escort sometime that I am with Nick. I don't know what to do at this point. I am at such a loss. I am so ashamed in myself. I kept telling myself that no one was getting hurt, that this affair would run its course and life would go back to normal. I never realized the pain and suffering that I put my husband through. I have cheated on him so many times, and he suffered through it. What can I do now? I am never going to cheat on my husband again, but it's probably too late to have this realization for me. Where do I go? What can I do? I know many of you will say some horrible things about me, and that's okay, but please help me save the marriage I ruined. Comment 1. Your post broke my heart for your husband. How can you possibly think that this would not have consequences? The first step is to tell your husband what you did, even if he already knows. He might still be willing to attempt to save your marriage, or he might really have worked through the pain and is now working towards an exit strategy. In either case, you need to tell him. You also need to have a long, deep conversation with yourself. Why did you cheat in the first place? Are you still committed to this marriage in a way that you should be? If you are, then why did you feel the need to cheat? Be prepared for the most likely outcome of this situation. A divorce, but if you're both still willing, try your best to save it with couples therapy and tons of honesty. Comment 2. There is not saving this marriage. You've broken a good man to the point he feels nothing. From his writing, he basically says the same except that he's gonna stick it out for your child. But honestly, children are more perceptive than parents give them credit for, and by staying in this loveless marriage, I'm afraid to think that the most likely outcome would be that your daughter ends up with a crapload of emotional issues of her own, because she sees a father that doesn't love her mother and a mother that doesn't love her father. So she will most likely emulate the same behavior from both of you and herself growing up. She pick guys that are hurtful to her, and she will stay because that is what her mother did. She won't find a decent relationship right away without trying to find someone like her father, and that's a shame, because she most likely blamed her father for the lack of love when it was really her mother that destroyed her family, who is going to be viewed as emotionally abusive when all he really was hurt over and over again, basically ground down to the emotional equivalent of body without a soul. She's never gonna have seen the truly great, caring, loving man that he really was. You need to tell your husband immediately, and whatever he wants to do, you do it. It'll most likely be divorce, but you don't have any right to question his decision at this point. No arguments, just say yes, okay, and that's it. And Faye, I really think you should admit what you have done to Nick's wife as well. She has a right to make a similar decision for herself and her children. You and Nick don't deserve you keep hurting your families. Comment 3. This is the saddest post I have ever read. I'm pretty sure you get the picture that what you did is close to being unrepairable. I say close to because we don't know if your husband is willing to give you a shot or not despite everything you've done. It's sickening that you knew it was wrong, but instead of doing what was right, you pushed the thought out of your mind and pretended everything was great. Not once have you thought about confessing, and it took only reading your husband's diary entries for you to actually regret your actions, and sadly I feel like you only regret it because your husband is now over you after all that time. Here is another way you can view this situation. Your husband realized you cheated and tried to win you over. You had all that time to see how much he loves you, end your affair, and work on reconciliation after coming clean. But in all the time you keep cheating, your husband's soul slowly dies the more effort he put into loving you, just for you to continue to see Nick. Ask yourself this question and answer it honestly. If the roles were reversed, would you have taken him back after everything? I doubt you would say yes to that. Also, Faye, affairs don't run its course. You either let it go on or you stump it. Even if you don't cheat with Nick anymore, there's nothing stopping you from finding someone else to get that thrill back. I would want to wish you luck like I do with other people that are either wayward or betrayed. But if I'm being honest, I really hope your husband finds someone better and new instead of settling for you. It wouldn't be fair for anyone, not him, not you, and not your daughter. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed the video, hit like. If you would like to see more, feel free to subscribe.